Maybe he is hosting.
No, we're going live. So, hey, it's Luke Edmonson, and I think that I saw that Simon was on there. And yes, Simon, you figured out it's Luke as Godox. You need some more coffee for sure. Can you at least, Simon, let me know that you're able to hear me or that I'm coming through on the audio? Just something. I'm trusting that I can. I tested out my mics. It looks like I'm flying the whole plane today. So I'll be presenting and then running the back-end software as well. So I really need your help letting me know that you can hear me. And once I feel like you can, I'll go ahead and get started. Well, you want to try testing on your phone, Dad, and just make sure I got my dad here as well, the wonderful David Edmonson. Why don't you go connect to the stream in the other room, make sure you can hear my voice. And then we'll just start going with it. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Simon. We're off to the races. So my name is Luke Edmonson, and it is a privilege to be with you once again. Got my dad here as well. Some of y'all may be familiar with our work. Most of you are not. Our background started in the 70s in commercial photography and went from that into eventually becoming known for, I guess, what would you say, wedding photography to some degree. Started doing portraiture for people we met along the way. And there's also a segment of people that appreciate us for our fine art creations. But between the two of us, Dad, pop your head in again. We represent, what do you want to say, too many years in photography?
Absolutely. But I still love it.
I do too. So it was quite fun to be able to see that Godox came out with the Lux Senior flash. One thing I can tell you is while it is a privilege, undoubtedly, to be one of their educators of light, we get no insight into what products are coming down the pike. All of a sudden, one day, we get an email saying, hey, we got a new product we're getting ready to launch. I can see that there's a question real quick. What part of Texas are we located? The answer is we're in Dallas, Texas. And so when the Lux Senior came out, I mean, for myself, I watched my dad shoot with cameras back in the 70s, but, even those flashes weren't as retro as what the Lux Senior looked like it was going to be. And so when we were given that assignment to go ahead and take it and play with it for a day and test it out, it was really fun. I see I've got somebody asking a question as well about being a new photographer struggling with an old Canon. Can we give you any advice, please? Depends on what that advice is, possibly. If you're just talking about how to learn photography in general, we can certainly talk about that. If it's something totally specific to the T6, I'll see how best I can help you. So I'm going to save some questions here for just a little bit in the end. Ooh, we got somebody from Guyana. I love that. French Guiana is one of the places I was always fascinated with. So with that said, let me start it up. Once I start this up, I'm going to not be able to see the chat as easily. I will have a pause for questions and answers. Go ahead and come back into it or leave your comments in there, and I'd be happy to respond to them. So let me see how to share this screen here and get this going. And I see at least one Italy. Ciao, come stai. All right, and here we go. Okay, so the Lux Senior flash, what can we say about it? Very obviously, it has that cool retro look about it. I think one of the questions that you're probably asking yourself is it right for you? Is it something that you should have in your bag? And the answer to that ultimately is going to be, it really depends on what style of photography you lean towards or what you're wanting to use it for. We used it in a multitude of different ways, all of which look like, what would you just call it? Lighting at the end of the day, right? If you know how to light and how to creatively light, you can find ways to light with just about anything. And in this particular case, there are certain attributes or qualities about the Lux Senior that make it distinctive. Certainly when we just look at it just off the top of the bat, we can see that it does have that pop out bulb flash that comes there. It's got the silver reflector that's there. So you're going to have some really good highlights that come into your picture. One of the things that you'll see when we get to the tech specs is it shoots at around 6,000 Kelvin. So it adds a bit of warmth to it. If you are comfortable using manual in terms of your flash settings. That's something that, it gives you that precision control. If you're less comfortable and you just need something that kind of helps you out along the way, you certainly can go into that automatic mode. Is it equivalent to TTL? No, because this doesn't have TTL, but it will give you a base reference, and then you can kind of adjust from there. So as we look at it, there's two sides to it. And one of the things that we can instantly observe is that, there's that bright red button up there on the top right-hand side. That is the release button to allow the pop-out flash to come out. Your flash is not going to fire effectively until you've gone ahead and released it. And so when you do it, you will hear a distinctive pop. So here we go. Yep. So that's the sound of it popping out. And even when you put it back in, there'll be a distinctive sound. So that you know that it's locked, and now you can close it. Another thing is that if you look at the back there, you'll see that we've got the standard controls. We have our S1 and our S2. That allows us to use the optical slave. And then in addition to that, you can have the S1 mode, which is essentially you're not using a separate flash that has red eye reduction. Or S2 mode is when you do have a flash that has red eye reduction, sends up that pre-flash signal. That way it triggers when you want it to trigger in sync with your camera. You also have on the back the button there that shows you whether it's ready to shoot. It's red when it's not ready. It's green when it's ready. And if you long press on it, it will even flash a certain number of times to let you know how much charge is remaining in the battery. So that's kind of convenient. I want to say from the top of my head, if it flashes 4 times, it's at full power, 3 times 75%, 2 times 50%, etc. Talking just a bit more about that meter on the back, I'd be happy to kind of walk you through kind of how to go about approaching a manual metering. My personal preference or way about going to do it is just to go ahead and start by figuring out, okay, what ISO am I at? And then set my distance correspondingly. So let's say I was 1 meter away in this particular example, and I was at ISO 200. Well, now that's basically lined up there. I could adjust it just slightly more if I want to get it closer to the 200. And then from there, I can then adjust by rotating the outer ring. And you can see how there's that triangle at the top. And that's telling me it's currently set for 1/8 power at f/5.6. And so if I wanted to shoot more at 2.8, we'd know that we'd want to dial it down to a 32nd. If I needed to be at f/16, I could then dial it up to full power. So start by setting your distance and your ISO. Once that's done, then from there you go in and you adjust based off of your desired f-stop what you want your flash power to be. Another thing to consider on the front of it is going to be the optical sensor is there. That's that red sensor that's there. That allows you to be able to trigger this flash remotely. When we went out and shot, that's something that we did successfully. If you've never shot with an optical sensor, it's important for you to understand that it doesn't do well if it's in bright situations. The light cannot hit that sensor from the flash. So in darker or dimmer situations, you're going to have much more success. It doesn't necessarily have to even be line of sight as long as it's seeing the flash from the other.
Early morning and later afternoon.
That's right. Yeah, scoot closer so I can hear you. And then I spoke to you briefly about the fact that it has that pop-up bulb or the pop-out bulb. People want to know kind of how many flashes to expect, and it's rated for about 150 full power shots if you were taking it out into the field. Finally, you have the proverbial sinkhole that's over there on the side, and that comes in useful. And I want to say it's about a 2.5 millimeter hole. We had a way that we did to rig it up where we had to take a 3.5 millimeter and reduce it down to a 2.5 millimeter, and it worked just fine like that. And then, of course, as people have already noted in many reviews, it's an internal battery, USB-C charging. We found it charged rather quickly, but no, you can't just swap out a battery if for some reason your flashes run out of power. You're going to have to go ahead and charge it back up. The final quick things that I'll hit before we start looking at photos themselves and what it was like to shoot with it. on the technical level. I mentioned this just briefly before, but you're going to see that it's a bit warmer. It's at that 6,000 Kelvin. And I think in part, the reason that they did that was because of that silver reflector being a little bit cooler as it was, just to kind of help feel like it bounces out just a little bit. And it's relatively light. I would say that you could walk around with this and it feels certainly no heavier than any other flash that you have. And in many ways, I think it's actually much lighter without the batteries. Exactly.
It's kind of very ergonomic. You can just hold it in your hand very comfortably.
Yeah. Stylistically, it's beautiful to look at. It's fun to be able to kind of open up and roll your finger around as you're opening up the shade.
I also think that if you like the whole 1950s look and that direct flash look, it's like the perfect flash for you.
100%. Yeah, if you want like a newspaper look, a direct flash look, something that gives you, something that's maybe along the lines of fashion, but you don't necessarily want to use a total ring flash. You want to have a little bit more vignetting and shadows to it. This kind of comes in well. And certainly we all know that there's round head flashes out already, but this does give a little bit different specular quality because of the fact that it's a pop out bulb with the silver reflector. Not unlike, if you remember, like the old 360s or 180s that were the pop-up bulbs. There is, as we're looking at this particular slide, there's that auto flash mode where if you're starting out, great place to be able to kind of hang your hat. Here's how you read it. If you've never read something like this before, if they're telling you it's ISO 100 at f2.8, then if you have a lens that stops or opens up, to a maximum of f4, well, now that's going to make your ISO 200. So at 100, it's rated for 2.8. If your lens is only 4 or 5.6, then you need to adjust upward your ISO accordingly in order to be able to keep it correspondingly. And then because of the fact that the flash is putting out that amount of intensity, if you need to make some changes to what you want the brightness of the flash to be, you can do that as well. Okay. One other thing that can come in handy that may be overlooked or not seen, especially for people who are using this on a film camera or something, perhaps it's not a film camera, perhaps it's on a bracket of some kind or things like that, but something that doesn't really take a true hot shoe, but it's more of a cold shoe. They're suggesting that you use something as a barrier between the bottom of the flash. It's just a simple single head trigger or connector that's down there, but that and then the top of the shoe. Sure. And that could be just a piece of paper that you slide in there, but that's just something to know about. Okay, so when it came time for us to go out and do our shoot, we decided that we were going to pretend it was a high school senior, and we were going to start at sunrise and shoot all day. So from that standpoint, one of the things that we wanted to get was just a sunrise shot. See how it did when the sun was first coming up kind of in the back of the sky. One of the things also about it is we knew we were going to be shooting very direct flash in this particular scenario. And on top of that, even if we really wanted to put a flash somewhere else, could we have made it work by using a boom pole or something like that? Sure. But we were out on a dock on the water that was shaped essentially like a T. And so, unless you had, if you really wanted to move your flash, unless you had a boat that you were putting it in, or you got in the cattails, the space that was up there was rather limited.
And I think because it typically goes on the hot shoe, I think it's good just to see what the camera does to give the look that kind of comes with it. And we'll show where we actually take it off the camera and show different form.
That's right. So our first shot started with a base exposure of f7.1, and I don't need to read all this to you. I'll do it this first time, and then after that, I'll kind of hit on it only if it has something important. We're at a 200th of a second, ISO 125, and obviously we're silhouetted because we haven't added in the flash. But you can see that we're getting, detail there within the sky. The only thing we don't have detail in is our subject. And so once we brought that flash on or turned that flash on, now all of a sudden it looked like this. And in my opinion, this is showing and demonstrating very well how much warmth is coming from that 6,000 Kelvin. it has a warm feel to it just naturally out of camera.
Yes, and I like the distance up because look at the shadow under her chin, and it's just kind of a proper little shadow.
Sure. And what you're saying by that is the fact that it's mounted on camera, it's raised just enough over the axis of the lens that you like kind of how the shadows, are coming. Our flash is set to full power from approximately about 5 feet away. And it was a simple, easy way to be able to start. Now, for the next thing that we were going to do, we said, well, okay, that's flash on camera. What if we wanted to shoot instead of on a horizontal basis, we wanted to shoot vertical? And if you have any experience with this at all, you know that if you have a flash that's on camera and you rotate it, that one of the things it will do is it will cause your shadows on your subject to start kicking off to one side or the other, depending on which direction you turn your camera. So the solution to that is you've got to mount your flash on a bracket in order to get your flash over the axis of your lens. And so what that would look like is something like this. Now, there are many ways that you might try and solve this. You might get a trigger on top of there that has the ability to have a separate radio controlled trigger that you're going to, and that's how you trigger the flash. In our particular case, we just took the sync cord that we had and went ahead and plugged it in. But since we were trying to plug it in then to the side of the X Pro trigger, now we needed to use a reducer in order to get it to fit. And then we also found we had to go in the settings and change the settings to tell the sync to push a signal out. And once we did that, then whenever we fired the camera, now the flash went off. I would also say that because of the fact that the flash is over, now your shadows are going to be much more directly behind her. Someone might say, well, that's more akin to a ring flash or whatever. It's something where the flash itself is not drawing as much attention to itself by having the shadows extend only to one side. Yeah. And so, that shot looks very simple, straightforward, something like this. We just went and grabbed a wall, said, why don't we come over here? Shooting there, from about 4 feet away, flash was set to half power. Now for the next one, the next scenario that we went to, we said to ourselves, okay, well, what if we wanted to more balance our flash? What if we wanted the ambient light to maybe be an architectural feature within the particular scene that we were doing? What would that look like? And so for that look, we went and went underneath an overpass. It was starting to get hot. We're in Texas, and so when we were doing this, it was July. These days, we're all 100 degrees plus. Plus. Yes, except plus. For anybody who's watched the weather knows that it's been hot around here. It's been hot in a lot of places in the world this summer. So you're quickly running for cover as soon as you can. So we saw that there were the interesting light patterns that are happening on there. We wanted to bring her in. We shot a base exposure so that we had kind of a feeling of what she'd be like. Similar type things. She's more of a silhouette, a little bit of ambience, bringing in a slight amount of detail into her. But we've got the light pattern going on the wall.
Absolutely, showing the defined shadows.
Yep. Now, because of the power of this flash, it's not something where we're ever going to overpower what the sun is doing at this particular point. But we don't want to so illuminate the scene that we lose those architectural shapes. We wanted them as part of it. So we positioned her in between them in the darker area. And so once we turned our flash on, we're now shooting at full power because we're at the maximum that it can do. And we're at a distance of approximately 5 feet. And so the resulting effect of balancing our flash with the ambient light winds up looking something along these lines. And again, you can see there's that warmth kind of coming into the overall scene from the flash bulb and from the reflector.
And the pretty jawline from the flash.
Well, sure, because of the position of the flash, it's on a direct flash. Now we're starting to get that shape going on as well. So where do you take something like this? Well, okay, so we figured out what it looks like when we shoot straight as expected. We figured out what it would look like if we shoot vertical and tried to control our shadows. We figured out how to balance. The next thing that we wanted to try and do is, okay, what can we do with two lights and what distances can the optical slave be triggered outdoors during the day? And what would the flash look like if it's fired from a distance? So now we're kind of getting to see the whole light pattern. So let's layer all those aspects together inside of one picture. And so for that, we ended up going over underneath the underpass just a little bit more so that we could get the optical slave to trigger the way that we needed it to. Again, any light that's ambient light that's hitting your optical slave, and it's most likely not going to work because it's not a radio trigger. It requires on that signal coming from the flash that triggers it. So here became our base exposure. This happens to be about 2 car lanes of distance between the camera and where the subject is, or the model. And then behind her are another 2 car lanes. And it was morning traffic, so we're kind of waiting in between, cars to be able to get the shot, and, dodging in and out. They're kind of honking and wondering what we're doing. It was fun. Certainly not something we recommend or advocate for ever getting in traffic. That's not what this is saying. We needed just to get to a dark enough place during the daylight. That was our sole thing. So there's our shot. So now we come in from behind. I'm holding it. It is not line of sight. I am specifically, when I say it's not line of sight, the 2 flashes aren't having to physically see each other, but the flash that's going to trigger behind her does have to see the light coming from the flash. So I'm trying to tuck up behind her and get as skinny as I can. And one thing my wife would say is I'm not skinny, but if round is a shape, I'm getting there. But I love you, babe. Regardless, it worked. And that was the neat thing. So we were able to shoot that flash off. It was set to about a 16th power, about 10 feet behind the subject. And it's at roughly 30 feet from the camera to give you a perspective of what we were doing, outside on location. And then you want to flip around and see the other side of it. And the other side of it's going to look something like this, where now we're filling much more of the frame with the flash. We're beginning to see some of the vignetting effect that one would expect to see coming from from it. We're getting to see how the highlights from the silver are hitting certain areas. There's a bit of a hot spot or brighter spot there within the middle. And then, of course, the next thing that you're able to look at is we said, let's zoom in a little bit. They can kind of get an idea as well of just the fact that you can see that separation light is going off. Now, is this more of an exercise than it is a commercial fashion shoot?
Yes.
Of course it is. But, that's the whole point, is let's go out there and see what we can do with this in a real world type situation. Now, if you were me, if I was you, I'd want to see again, show me what the difference was between when the flash didn't go off and when the flash goes off. So I'm just going to toggle between these two so you can just get a sense of the light pattern. Again, this is now when the flash goes off and we get a sense of what the light pattern is doing from a distance. And then that's what it's doing when the flash is not going off and we're just shooting with our ambient light only. And one thing that you may observe is that in this case, the flash looks cooler in its light temperature than it does in the ambient. And that would be expected because we're not in direct sunlight. So we are in a much warmer Kelvin type situation under this overpass. So while the flash is consistently at about 6,000 Kelvin, the lighting situations that you're in may change.
It almost looks like the Kelvin was probably in the 7,000 or 8,000 range
at that particular moment. Yep, absolutely. Yep. Okay, let's see what's next. Next, creative shadows. Okay, so now that we know that we can use 2 lights and that we can trigger them, what else could we do by having 2 lights? And if we didn't want to run around with soft boxes and a bunch of other equipment, but we just had these 2 flashes, one on camera and one behind. Well, one of the things that first comes to mind, if you had especially something that's kind of a reflective pattern back there, is you might set one of your flashes in the background to create a bit of a shadow on the wall. And then you use your front flash to go ahead and illuminate the scene, but without filling in all the detail from that shadow. And so the way that we balance those 2 things is it looks something like this. Here's our base exposure, just getting it set up. You can see we obviously have the sockets under her eyes and so forth. The scene looks rather flat. There's a beautiful shot perhaps to be taken there, but it's not there yet. Now we come in and we see that, here I am holding the flash, the voice activated light stand. It's set to 16th power, approximately 8 feet. It's a little bit more over to the side so that we're going to get more specular on the reflective material directly behind her. And then we're also going to cast her shadow longer in front of her. And so what would that ultimately look like? It's going to look like this. This is how you bring those two balanced aspects together, with the main flash in the front being at about an 1/8 power from roughly 6 feet. That's what's going to create the specular in her eyes. And so now we're starting to create a little bit of depth and dimension by varying our light and dark areas while playing off of the light and dark, kind of natural pattern of the diamonds. By now, this day is getting entirely too hot, and we're saying to our model, let's go inside. And so the first thing that we did when we went and got inside was say, hey, let's start playing around here in the studio with just some more bright, bold colors. And what if we were doing more of a lifestyle type shoot? And so, here we are, we're shooting direct flash. We're just against a pink background wall. Our base exposure is going to look very much like this. As much as possible, we tried to mimic whatever expression we were doing for you, so it felt as seamless as possible. But there's certainly some ambient that's coming in from the windows to the side, but we're letting the flash kind of overpower the scene, and this kind of gives you that more punchy editorial look from the way that it presents itself. And the final result looks something like this. So this is the flash set to about an 1/8 power, ISO 100. At approximately 10 feet. If we wanted to make the flash even more dominant within the scene, we could move in closer. We could stop down more. And any number of different ways to control our ambient there. Other than obviously, we're not going to be able to adjust our ISO because it's maxed out at 2/50th of a second on the camera we were on. Then we said, okay, well, now that we've done kind of what's expected in the studio, what's next? And for that, we said, well, let's start seeing if we can create some more form lighting with this flash. And let's now use our off-camera flash to be our primary main light, and then use the flash on camera just to be our trigger and work along those lines. And so for that, we brought her over here to this yellow wall. And again, you can see that we're trying some different variations. We shot it with direct flash. We ended up saying, what if you were to grab some different hacks, a plastic bag, maybe it's just a silk diffusion.
We did use a plastic trash bag, and we also used a diffusion sock from Kodak's and just brought it with us.
Yep. Ultimately, we ended up liking the silk that we had, the sock that we had that was used for a Kodak's beauty dish already, because it just kind of is a beautiful diffusion material, and just kind of wrapped it around there. Of course, the thing you got to keep in mind is that your fingers and or material can't cover the optical trigger in order for it to fire. But as you can see here, the flash head is not pointed. The flash or the optical trigger just has to see the light. And because we're in the studio type setting, it was able to do that even as it's pointed away. So here she is sitting. Here's our base exposure with the no flash. And then now we're going to go ahead and turn on our flash and create something that looks very much like this. Our main flash is set to a 1/16th of a power because we're about 3 feet away. Naturally, you would expect with a flash that is closer to your subject, it's going to be a softer quality of light. Naturally, you would expect the fact that we've gone ahead and put the diffusion on there, it's also going to be a softer quality of light in the way that it comes. And then the flash that we have on camera is set to a 64th. And what you will see, and we'll go ahead and pull it in like this, is that the flash that's on camera is set so weak that in reality and in truth, you're not getting a second catch light.
Just one specular.
Just one specular. Now, we will show you a different situation later on when we're outside where there will be 2 catch lights, as you would expect, because the second flash that's triggering does have to be powered up. So this is done. What's next? Well, what if we were then to switch and make it into a backlight? Let's just pivot, do a voice-activated light stand behind the stage. And or behind the backdrop. And so here we are, and we're just pointing it down. This is our base exposure. We're now going to go into what it's going to look like when that flash goes off. You can see it's just being handheld up there just high enough so that number one, the optical slave can see. And then second, we want to make sure that the flash is hitting our subject where we want it to hit on the back of her head. and it's set to a 16th power. Next, we go into, okay, well, let's add in our main light to this scene. That's set to a 1/4 power. Both are triggering, but we're getting that hair highlight on there, as you would expect if you were using a 2-light setup.
And I think it's important to look at her skin too, to see how the direct flash kind of gives that little bit of a it's not quite a specular, but just on the forehead.
I'm going to just hit back real quick and just kind of show, because you brought it up at this point. You can see you're going to have more of a shiny specular, as you'd expect with just the reflector, versus when we go here, where it's just a little bit more even in the way that it's done because of the fact that it has the diffusion material. Okay.
And you could put the diffusion on.
You could have, yeah.
On camera too.
Sure. There's 15 ways we could have done it. Next thing that we wanted to go into was, okay, well, let's start mixing up our ambient light with it. And what about a headshot? Because something like this, somebody might say, well, the flash is not the most powerful flash. It has a guide number of 14. I may have to be really close to someone. What's that going to look like if I did a headshot? So we shot kind of the same picture from 2 different distances. And so the first version of it shows David shooting here. And I'm going to say he's roughly at 10 feet here as the crow flies. The base shot as it's coming in here looks something like this. When we add in the flash, you're now going to get something like this. And sure enough, yep, it's about 10 feet away that it's going. You can see that specular in her eye is pretty tiny. From there, I then came in even tighter on her and just said, let's just shoot just more of like a head and shoulders type shot, see what that's looking like. And the ultimate result looked a lot like this. Shot at half the distance, about 5 feet away. We've changed our power to an 1/8 power.
And the closer you get, the softer then the specular on her forehead.
Absolutely. Yeah. For anybody who is starting out in photography and is unaware, the larger the light source, the closer the light source, the softer the light. The further the light source, the smaller the light source, the harsher the light, or the stronger the shadows may be another way for you to understand it. Okay, so now we've gone through some of the day. Now let's go back out to sunset. We did absolutely have to sit in our car for like 30 minutes and just entertain the model, because we looked around at it and we said, the sun is too high. We're gonna have to wait. And then of course, once you have to wait and the sun starts going down and you get that right bounce light, now we got to move quickly. We did need to wait enough so that the flash could do its job to illuminate more of a scene. But the first concept that we went with was more of a storytelling type piece. If you were doing something, let's say more fine art, or you were just trying to do more artistic interpretation with your post-production.
Sure. Can we talk about that tilt-all tripod real quick?
Sure. The silver tripod. What do you want to talk about?
Why in the world, with all this amazing equipment, would you be having a tilt-all tripod that maybe was built starting in the 1950s?
Well, my father's first tripod was a tilt-all tripod. And one of the photographers that we personally admire is a guy named Irving Penn, who also used the tilt-all tripod. And while, yes, we have access to and probably could have every form of wonderful tripod that's out there, we find for ourselves that as we go through our career, there's nothing we would rather shoot on than the tripod that we started out on, because it's just like that old friend that's with you on every single photo shoot.
That's right.
And it works great. It's built like a beast. It's not ridiculously heavy. It will never fall apart on you. So that's why we have it. Okay, back to the program. So here we are shooting our base exposure. You can see obviously that this is a huge, large area that would have to be lit. When you bring the flash, as you can imagine, we're going to have to shoot it with full power in order to be able to make it work. We're at a distance of approximately 12 feet. And so the final interpretation, as I joked with Dad, I go, you can clearly tell you brought up your shadows in this particular picture, because there's no way the flash lit the trees that well.
It did not.
But a fine art picture like this doesn't have to be interpreted realistically. And it just shows you what could be done. And you still can see how we're getting that sunlight coming on the back of her hair, kind of giving that separation light. The sunlight coming on the back of her body, giving us that separation light. And so the sun is our main light source within this scene. It's also acting as our backer separation light. Moving quickly from there, we then switched into on this idea of a high school senior. Well, what if they had a sport or something that they enjoyed? We decided to make her more of a fencer. And so in this particular case, we're going to use it kind of a bit more as a fill flash for the scene, let the sun really come in from behind and make her hair glow a bit more. And so the distance, looked something roughly like this. You've got your classic, photographer clamps that are on the back, making whatever size outfit you have work. And so this is our base exposure there. We just needed the top, and then we just needed the sword. And then the final shot looks a lot like this.
Exactly like that.
And you can see the sun. It's starting to go down there. It's right on the horizon line. And so we've got it's giving us that nice glow from behind there.
So then we had to run really fast because we were running out of sunlight.
We were, and we needed to get to the other side of that hill. So we get to the other side of the hill, and now we're going to say, let's do our piece de resistance. What are we going to do with this that makes it look not like an on-camera flash? Well, we're going to obviously shoot it with off-camera flash. And how are we going to make that work? Well, we want to use the soft light. We want to create form. So here we are within the scene. We said, let's put her in black because now we've got a reason to be able to have our fill flash there because we need to see detail or depth within our dark areas, our shadows. But we still want to make sure that the flash that's being held up by her face is our primary light source. And so for that, you've got your base exposure here, 4.5, 1/25th of a second, ISO 100, no flash. You can see we're getting some beautiful pinks within the sky. One of the things that is interesting is those pinks that are there are not showing up if you just shot an ambient exposure, let's say on your phone or something like that, because it's brightening things up too much. And this is a classic example here. This is that same sky shot at the same time with a different exposure, different resulting moments. But you can clearly see we've got our flash on camera and we've got our flash being held by the wonderful David Edmonson. And so the resulting effect of that looks exactly like this. So here we are. Our main flash is set to 1/4 power. It's roughly 4 feet away, so it's a softer light source. Our triggering flash is the one that's on camera. It's set to 1/32 of a power. It's at roughly 8 feet away. And what I'd show you here is that absolutely, if you were to look inside of her eye there, you can see those two different speculars appearing within her eye. And if it bothered you, you could go in and remove one of them if you wanted to.
And you should, because there's only one sun in the sky.
Generally speaking, yes. There may be an occasion where you're trying to cause somebody to be disruptive or throw them off balance. But generally speaking, a rule of thumb, as it were, would be that there's only one sun in the sky. So there should only be one specular in an eye. One of the other things that we had the privilege of doing was helping to create a promo video for the Lux Senior. It's going to take 2 minutes of your time. We'll go ahead and show that. It may also bring up some of the additional features that are within there. But the intent of this is a lot of sizzle. It was just the brief on it literally said make a 2-minute video that doesn't even show demonstrations because we want to show the demonstrations separately later and have educational opportunities like this where we can answer questions.
It's supposed to create an old school vibe, but at the same time, I think it's got some education at the end of it.
Sure. So here we go. All right. So thank you for allowing me to fly this plane. Let me see if I can get this going here like this so you can see me. There you go. Wonderful. And I apologize because when you're running the presentation and your screen is filled with your keynote, sometimes it's hard to be able to see all the comments that are going on. But let me just kind of start from the top here and see what all we've got. I see that we have somebody there from Ghana, West Africa. Thank you, Digital Master. Loved my time in Senegal. I'd say Nangi Def. I know you probably don't speak Senegalese, but just throwing out what I can for you. I definitely say bonjour. Appreciate Brock saying this looks great. Simon saying the layers in the image look great. Thank you. Nagayuki, thank you, sir, as well for being here. It's always good to see you, my friend. Love you. And then Dadon, you were asking the question, are you taking any questions? So I'm happy to do it. Now, I did see just now that it says no sound. So hopefully the video had sound, or did it not? I guess I'm going to have somebody in the chat tell me whether that was the case. And if it did not, I apologize. Okay, good. Simon, question. He has a Godox V860. Is there any benefit aside from the crazy cool factor to him getting a Lux Senior? Well, Simon, can you tell me more about what it is that you shoot? What type of content do you shoot? What's your subject matter? And I'll give you an example.
You can answer it generically.
Yeah.
If you shoot vintage, you like kind of retro styles.
If you shoot street photography, if you were to be somebody who shot in clubs or society pictures, those kind of things.
If you dress like a hipster.
Okay. Food, really. I would say depending on how small the food was that you were doing, if you needed to get like a much more specular light source, and for some reason a beauty dish was just too big, you might be able to justify it. But in a general sense for food,
I would say for food, probably not.
Yeah, it's probably not its most useful application, but you strike me as a creative thinker. Could you make it work? Of course you can make something work. Of course you can. Light's light, and each has its own intrinsic attributes. This light is going to be an on-camera flash, typically with a reflector, with a slightly warmer color temperature, and that pop-up bulb. So it's going to have a natural vignette that's going to create, depending on the scene or the look that you're trying to go for. And I appreciate the fact that you hummed your own sound. I apologize. I won't have you all watch the video again, but I can figure out a new way to try and make that work. That's good to know in terms of it. Okay. Well, how many people would like us just to continue teaching? You want us to continue teaching, or can we answer more questions about the Lux Senior? I guess there's at least one person that's going to say, teach, or show us some other stuff.
Well, I think you could, in teaching.
Yeah, let's talk lighting.
That you use.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yep, I agree. Okay, let's see if we can do this where we get a presentation plus our faces. Okay, and we'll go back into here, and we'll go back into here. Beautiful. Whoops. Okay. So if somebody was trying to figure out how to light, this is a classic example of a situation where we were asked to use 5 V1s, round head flashes. We didn't have any soft boxes or anything like that. These are just bare bulbs, and light a scene using them. And we produced a whole video for Godox of this. It was one of our most enjoyable projects to work on. And one of the things that I'd say to you is when you understand the way that directional light works, the key light source within here, not light source, but light that was used was the light that we had in the corner of the room bouncing into the corner and the ceiling, because what it did is it blended
control the ratios.
all the different flashes that were coming from different directions
Mhm.
all together to where it felt much more harmonious and whole. Too often we see just strong directional light, which, it may be great to have that direction. You're just trying to refine the harshness, the strength, the intensity of it, so to speak, so that the entirety of the whole, the visual that you're looking at, feels a bit more cohesive.
Mhm.
So I'm a little concerned with the sound not working the way that it did. I'm going to take 1 second here just to see if there's anything I can figure out on the sharing for making sound. If not, I'll just leave my mic on, and we'll do it from that standpoint. So let's just do it that way. This will take you about 1 minute.
Now let's stop and take a minute and look at where we placed our lights, what were their settings, and what modifiers did we use. After scouting the location, we sketched out the initial design. We purposely built compositional triangles using leading lines, styling, and gesture. And then we thought it'd be fun to repeat the alternating light and dark areas both horizontally and vertically. And all of this is done for the sole purpose of rewarding you for looking as your eye moves in and around the picture. We set our camera to ISO 100 at f8 in a 30th of a second to allow the ambient light coming from the lanterns and fire to show. Outside the door, we double stacked 2 heads to mimic the sun striking the main subject from head to toe. We also put another light shooting through the window. All 3 exterior flashes are set to full power. We hid 2 behind the door and desk at a quarter power inside the room. And then there's one illuminating the mother and daughter set to half power. We bounced the last light to the corner, opening up the shadows and blending it all together. That one was set to full power. There you have it.
All right. So, that's what you can do with just 5 off-camera flashes if you were trying to create a scene. What if you wanted to light a scene as well, but you're going to use LED lights? How are you going to make that work? And so if you were to create a picture like this, I think that ballpark, we used about 13 different lights, 3 of which are being used architecturally. The reason we needed 13 lights was not because we necessarily set out with a number in mind. We're big believers in using sufficient lighting for a particular purpose or application. And these were 30-watt LEDs. This is the S30. And there's something that you could go and watch to be able to learn kind of more about this. We'll show you just the quick minute and a half of it where it kind of explains how this shot was put together. So let's take a look.
We admire how theatrical lighting designers use light to frame the stage, as well as directing our eyes where to look. One helpful way to think about lighting a scene is that it's equal parts sculpting and painting, covering large areas and chiseling away at smaller ones. For David and myself, the art side of things always informs our technical decisions. We want our lighting to establish an emotional undercurrent and to incorporate light in a way that creates interesting visual shapes and forms. When concepting the scene of a 1950s train station, we wanted the lighting to be both expressive and purposeful. Because of that, we imagined the time of day to be about 5:15 p.m., suggesting a mixture of strong light and shadows with a bit of doubt. We wanted the 3 downlights to create an architectural statement. The remaining lights are used to communicate mood and atmosphere and help bring emphasis to different areas of importance. One useful tip is to pay close attention to where you place both your highlights and shadows. To emphasize your main subjects, seek to separate them from the background to communicate their importance.
So hopefully that shows you what you could do if you were using LED lights indoors and you needed to use a bunch of them to light a scene that, what was that, maybe 16 feet tall by 24 feet wide? Something like that.
12 feet tall.
12 feet tall, 16 feet wide.
20 feet wide.
20 feet wide. There you go. So a large area. Another application moment might be when we were using the R1200. So this is a ring flash. Where could a ring flash come in beneficial? Well, of course, you can use it like one would expect to use a ring flash, coming in tight, no shadows, etc. But another situation that you could find yourself in is when you do not have the ability or don't want to bounce a light in order to control your ratios.
Mhm.
And so in that particular scenario, you may want to have that ring flash for that on-axis lighting that uses your fill flash.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what we did here. So we had an AD 1200 Pro that was firing in the back. We had an AD 1200 Pro that was going into a umbrella over at the side. And then to balance and blend the picture together, that's what we use the R1200 for here, to finish tying together the shot.
Exactly, bring enough fill in to create the ratios.
Yep. And while we're talking about the Lux Senior today, on the other end of the spectrum is the workhorse of Godox's lineup, which is the new P2400, which is to have 2400 watt seconds at your disposal. This one, I joke with Dad, I go, it's kind of a mixture of having a Ferrari or a sports car that can go really fast, but also like having a truck that you can take out in the mud and drop in 4-wheel drive and get through any situation. It's the best of both worlds within that sense. And so, a shot like this where you've got, a hula hoop artist who's spinning around, how many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different rings. Is that right? Yes, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hard to keep track of them all. And to get it all framed right and stuff like that, you can do a lot of like, okay, let's do it and let's see and hope and stuff like that. Or if you have a flash studio system or a lighting system that will keep up with how fast the action is moving consistently, then you could, put it in more of a motor drive and just fire through it.
But anybody that does stop action knows how important this is to be able to stop it when you want it.
Absolutely. So, in this case, we were using the R2400 ring flashes that were in the parabolic umbrellas and different things like that. But just to give you an idea, we dropped in, we put the camera on motor drive and shot 144 shots straight, just turning her to the side, saying, just roll that hula hoop over and over and over again.
But this is in like 45 seconds.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just as fast as the camera could go in order to fire it. And this is the resulting effect. And you go for the right application, it's great to know about something like this and have it within your arsenal. The other thing we'd say is it's been a privilege to be able to partner with Godox and B&H with their depth of field presentations to create on behalf of Godox for that. And that's something, if you'd like some more training, you can go out and find. But essentially, we had 5 different lighting scenarios of what you could do. This being just using the AD 100 Pro on location as a backlight, hair light, separation light. Then using a 300 Pro outside of the window, and creating something along those lines. From there, we also did a more of a balanced lighting situation, balancing our ambient with the parabolic. We used the P2400 for this shot, but just used a single head and a giant parabolic. So it's just a beautiful, big, soft light source. So you can see that shadow on the ground is very soft. And this is the resulting effect of how you create something like that. Took it into a commercial realm where we were using the 8600s, but it's much more using it with beauty dishes and just more of a chisel type light. Create something that looks along these lines, playing with atmosphere and so forth, but just shapes, just the strength and so forth. I think this was a total of 4 lights, because I think we had 2 600s going off inside of the area behind her. Then we took it in an editorial direction. What could you do if you were shooting perhaps with a type of lighting setup that many people don't consider? And that's one that we enjoy using, which is, hang on one second as he turns off his phone. That's where you use a larger softbox that acts as your fill light. And from the same direction, from the same basic vantage point, you have a primary main light source, which is a more chiseled light source, like a beauty dish or something along those lines, any sort of smaller light source. And so, for that, we created an editorial black and white shot that comes together like this. So, you're getting those speculars on the background, kind of up more by her face. You're getting light fall off, but you're still bringing in some shadow detail in the way that you bring it together. And we thought if anybody would like to be indulged for just a minute to
I think
spin.
this is important because it's got two lights in the exact same spot.
Yep.
One brighter, one less.
Yep.
More
So
for Phil.
we're going to take you through. This is about 4 minutes of your time, and we thank you.
Our fourth shot takes us in a more editorial direction, which we envision in black and white. So we shot it that way in camera. It's possible to use two lights coming from the exact same position, with one of them being your main light.
I would call it structured
The
lighting.
structured lighting, yeah, that's the
Because
better.
I want to create a deep shadow under her chin. She has this beautiful jawline that because we've used Jenna in the past, we just knew how we could create
Oh,
a
you want
structured
lighter?
photo and completely overpower the ambient light that's in the room.
Exactly, but then you bring in your fill light coming in from that exact same side, and now all of a sudden it kind of creates this feeling of spotlight effect on the face, and then just seeing some detail throughout the rest of the frame.
Just enough, because without that little blend of the fill light, it can create just a little too much drama, and you want that little bit of blending between the two, and just a little bit of more detail in the blacks.
If I was just to turn off our main light there and just shoot with the parabolic, it's going to look something like this. So you can see that there's just a little bit of fill light coming into the frame. And now if I go ahead and turn back on our main light, and I turn off our fill light, we're going to get something that looks a lot like this, which in general means that we have a beautiful girl that's very starkly lit, and we're just starting to get a little bit of light in terms of the background and so forth. There's not a lot of depth. It's kind of a very flat, dramatic shot, very stark in the way that it comes together. And when we bring in that fill light, it now starts to come together like this. And so this kind of has a little bit more detail and dimension as you kind of look across at the different background materials and stuff. It gives her a sense of being in an environment. Here we go. And right there. Beautiful, beautiful. Good, good, good. Good. That hand that's low is probably a little too low. Probably bring it up just a little higher. Yes, there you go. Very nice. We're basically at your waist up. Yep, nice. Very good. Perfect, perfect. Good. This simple two-light approach combines two different qualities of light coming from the same direction, to the left of the camera. We are entirely overpowering any ambient and only using our strobes to illuminate our subject. One AD600 is powered up and gridded and set as our primary light source, creating that structured lighting around the model's face. The second light is in the parabolic reflector and powered down because it adds more detail to the darker areas and background. This approach helps us blend our overall lighting while not creating secondary shadows. The underlying effect on your lighting ratios is to control or convey the sense of moodiness you want within your pictures. To us, it's very much a salt to
It
taste.
sure is. It's like the difference between a cook and a chef.
Yes.
The chef is just going to salt to taste. The cook is going to go, okay, I think I got the perfect ratio of salt. And the chef will taste it and go, no, I need a little more. It just needs to be just right. And just the other thing I would love to say is that, either you start off from the artistic side or you kind of start from the scientific,
mean as a
formula
photographer?
side. Yes.
Yes.
And the formula people need to go to the artistic side. The artistic side needs to go to the formula. You need to end up blending both of those things and ultimately from that, I hope you do create art.
On my fill light here, I ended up just bringing it up 0.3. A full stop was too much. I just wanted a third of a stop, a little bit more fill coming in. And that's the kind of thing where I go, practice, experience, eyeball teaches you.
And then our final shot that we created within that series that you could go and watch if you wanted to learn how these things are made is this more storytelling type piece, playing off of, classic painting, Andrew Wyeth, if you remember that famous
Christina's World.
Yeah, Christina's World, famous painting of her crawling in the field. We're just flipping it around. But again, compositions coming back into play, triangular composition and so forth. This is a single gridded light. Once again, you're trying to make sure that those architectural features from the lighting coming behind remain. So we don't want to overpower the scene in this particular type way and let light spill everywhere. We want it directional and focused. So with that, are there any other questions that we can help answer? Let me look over here again. I see gorgeous work. Thank you, Margaret. And I see Cosmoti saying excellent photos. I'll give people here another minute or two to get in any additional questions you might have about Godox lighting that we can help with. If you have any questions in particular about the Lux Senior, we're happy to answer those for you as well. And let me see if I can get off of presenting the screen here. And now I can see myself. I love it. Now I can actually see the comments. Well, in the meantime, anything else you want to say about this particular flash, Dad? Things that
my dad had one.
Yep. Well, I just bent that.
Mm-hmm.
Well done, Luke. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
No. So my dad, who was a photographer, started out with something like that. So it's kind of fun to go back to the 1950s kind of vibe.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I particularly enjoy I enjoy the foldable aspect of it. I already forgot. You push that back in, bring it together. Just has a nice weight in your hand. If you had it, if you were walking around with it,
almost like an iPhone.
Yeah. My hands are, I'd say I'll give you, this is an iPhone Pro. So it gives you a reference point, in terms of scale type thing.
Easy to put in your bag.
It is. Not overly thick, so it would fit well in terms of being something that you carry on your body, or if you, as you say, you put it in a bag.
Yeah.
Guys, I don't know what else to say other than just thank you. Thank you for investing time with us. You could have done so many different things with your time and your day right now, and you chose to spend it with us.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Here's kind of our little.
Yes, we need to do this because it's critical.
Well, I'm just saying, if you have any questions too, just follow us, and we'd be glad to answer anything that you ask.
Absolutely, yeah. It's at Luke Edmonson or at David Edmonson on most Instagram or Facebooks or things like that. You can find our website, Edmonson Photography, and email us there. But what I thought you were going to say is, what is our purpose as photographers? Is it just to take pretty pictures?
It is not. Our camera's just an excuse.
To do what?
To love on people.
And?
Have influence in their life. And
That's
for them to have influence in our life.
That's right. We have the privilege as photographers of being invited into so many people's lives. We get beyond barriers that most would not or could not. And even I'm thinking about you, Simon. If you're doing food photography, it's whether you're working with that chef or art director or food stylist, or whatever. There is an opportunity for us to love on others. And you cannot really do that very effectively if your own, I'll call it love tank, is not full.
Yeah, I think it's like a cup. If your cup's not full, or if you're
yeah, if it just has a hole,
it's not going to overflow.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to overflow into the lives of others. And we would just encourage you to use your camera to love on others and have influence in their lives. And as my dad says, they may even influence you as well. So with that said, blessings. Didn't see any more questions come in, but thank you. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Au revoir.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.